Hi, welcome to our lesson on simple interest. First, let's go over what it means so that it doesn't seem so foreign to you. So let's say you have parents, okay? And you would like to borrow money from them. So you go to your parents and you ask, hey, can I borrow $50 because I want to buy a video game? Well, your parents, if they wanted to, they can charge you money for borrowing money. So on top of the $50 that you have to pay them, they're also going to say, well, you also have to pay me $5 extra for borrowing that money. So in total, you're going to have to give them $55 back. Okay? So simple interest is the extra amount of money that you have to pay for borrowing money. Now, sometimes you'll have a situation where interest is good. For example, let's say you got some money from your birthday and you were given $200. Now, instead of keeping that $200 at home, you want to go to the bank, and what the bank does is that when you deposit or put in your money into the bank, they're going to give you interest or extra money for letting them keep your money in the bank. So over time, your money is not going to stay $200. It's going to go up. So that extra money you get on top of $200 is also interest. So altogether, interest is just the extra amount paid or earned from borrowing or depositing money. Now let's include this in our math cap. And this part you should write down. So to calculate that extra amount that you have to pay or extra amount that you earn from depositing money, we're going to be using this formula. And all this formula says is that when you take your principal, which is the original amount of money that you have, let's say you're depositing money. When you deposit a certain amount, the bank's going to give you an interest rate, and when you multiply that by your principal amount and however much time you keep it there, that's going to tell you how much extra money you get. So I'm going to put in definition or under these words, kid-friendly definitions aside from the ones you see here. So in kid-friendly language, simple interest, or the extra amount that you earn or pay, is calculated from multiplying your principal, which is the amount of money that you deposit or borrow, times the percent interest rate, times however long you're going to borrow that money for. So let's work through some practice problems so that this makes more sense. For our first practice problem, we have Tim's parents lend Tim $100 so he can buy a remote-controlled helicopter. They charge Tim 5% simple annual interest. What will be the total amount that Tim will owe his parents in 2 years? So when you have a problem that involves borrowing or depositing, you know that you're going to be using I equals PRT. Now the first thing you want to do is label the parts that you know. So when he borrows that money, that $100, that's your principal. Okay, that's the original amount that's borrowed. Then that 5%, that's going to stand for your rate. Then it says that he will borrow that money for 2 years, and you want to know how much money he has to owe in 2 years. So this is time. So when I substitute this into the equation, I have simple interest, or the extra amount he has to pay, will be 100, which is the principal, times the interest rate, which is 5%, times 2 for the 2 years. Now, as you remember, when we have percents in a problem, we always want to change them to a decimal. So I'm going to rewrite this as 100 times 0.05 times 2. Now, when I multiply all this, I'm going to multiply two numbers at a time. And it doesn't matter which order that you multiply, as long as you get the right answer. So in this situation, I like to multiply the decimal last. I like to multiply whole numbers first. So here, 100 times 2 is 200, and then I'm going to multiply 200 times 0.05, and that gives me $10. So this represents the extra money that Tim that Tim has to pay his parents back. But that doesn't answer the question of how much he will have to pay them total. So total, you'll have to rewrite a new equation, will be the original amount, which is 100, plus the extra amount he has to pay, which is 10. So after borrowing for 2 years, Tim will have to pay his parents back $110. Go ahead and pause the video so you can copy this work down if you couldn't copy it along the way. Now we'll move on to our second practice problem. Okay, in this problem we have you borrow $50 at 4% simple annual interest. How much will you owe in half a year? So again, you stick with the same equation, the same formula. Simple interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. Now what I want you to do is identify the P, the R, and the T in the problem and pause the video. So hopefully you identified principal as $50. The interest rate is the 4%, and the time is half a year. Now when you put this into your equation, everything just plugs in the way you see. So to figure out how much simple interest you get, you're going to have to take your principal, which is $50, multiply that times your interest rate, which is 4%, times the year. In this situation, it's half a year. Very first thing you do is you change your percent to a decimal. So we're going to have 50 times 0.04 because our decimal moves 2 places to the left. Now here, you have a choice. You can either leave 1/2 as a fraction, or you can change 1/2 to a decimal. Now since I know a lot of you like to work with decimals more than fractions, I'll just change 1/2 to a decimal, and I got 0.5. And if you forgot how to change a fraction to decimal, all you have to do is divide your numerator by your denominator. Top goes in, bottom goes out. So now I need you to pause the video and figure out this answer. So go ahead and multiply these 3 numbers. Pause it. Once you're ready to compare, play the video. Okay, and if you look to the left, what I did was I split this up again into 2 multiplication problems. I just multiplied from left to right. So 50 times 0.04 gets me 2. And then I multiplied that by half a year, which is 0.5, and I got 1.000. So the extra amount of money you have to pay back is $1. Now because the question is asking how much will you owe in half a year, meaning how much you have to pay back total, you're going to have to do total is equal to $50 plus that $1. Hopefully you can do this in your head. So total, you will have to pay back $51. Okay, so it's the same format. You plug in your principal, your rate, and your time. And for our last problem, it's a little different because we are depositing money. So here we have Sheila deposits $2,000 in a bank account. Her simple annual interest rate is 2%. How much will she earn in 9 months? So what you want to do is treat this the same way. So write out your I equals PRT. Go ahead and identify your PRT. Pause the video. And hopefully you identify the following as your PRTs. So this is your principal. This is your interest rate. And the 9 months, I'm just going to draw an arrow, is your time. Plug those in and I have I is equal to $2,000 times 2% times, well here, I have months. Now when you have a problem that's in months, you have to actually convert it into years. Now to convert months into years, you know that there are 12 months in a year, so I'm just going to write 9 out of 12. So again, to convert months into years, you want to just put it over 12 since there's 12 months in a year. Now what you can do in this situation is, well first let's change our percent to a decimal. Now 9/12, again some of you don't like to deal with fractions. So if you convert this fraction 9/12 to a decimal, all you have to do is divide your numerator by your denominator, or you can even realize that you can simplify your fraction 9/12 to 3/4 and convert 3/4 to a decimal. Either way, 9/12 represents 0.75 of the year. So now what I want you to do is go ahead and multiply this out, pause the video, and compare after you've gotten your number. And hopefully you did the work on your own before seeing this, but when you multiply 2,000 times 0.02, you should get 40. And when you multiply 40 times 0.75, I finally get 30. So again, $30 represents the extra amount of money that you earn from depositing that money into the bank account. So let's look back at the question. The question asks, how much will she earn in 9 months? Well, this is the final answer. She earns $30 because $2,000 is already what she has. So, for this answer, $30 is the amount of money she earns in 9 months. So what I want you to do is, if you have any questions, take note of those right now and write it down into your notes on the parts that you don't understand. And I'm going to share a quote with you in honor of Martin Luther King Day on Monday. So hopefully you didn't just enjoy the 3-day weekend, but realize that we've come a long way as a nation. And I wanted to leave you with this quote. "The time is always right to do what is right," by Martin Luther King Jr. So if you have any questions, once again, bring those to class tomorrow, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.